In June 1941, a German Wehrmacht sergeant named Klaus Voigt examined a captured British submachine gun near Smolensk during Operation Barbarossa. The weapon in his hands appeared almost deliberately inferior, stamped sheet metal instead of forged steel, a crudely bent barrel channel, riveted rather than welded construction. His unit had grown accustomed to the MP-40, a gun that gleamed with German precision engineering, and this crude thing felt like a deliberate insult. Yet within 4 years, millions of these same inferior guns would be chambered in German pistol caliber, pressed into service by German forces themselves, and scattered across Europe in such quantities that Wehrmacht ammunition depots would be dedicated to stockpiling British 9mm parabellum rather than developing German alternatives. The Sten gun's rise from mockery to inevitability is not a story about clever engineering beating brutal simplicity, but rather about why sometimes apparent weakness becomes strategic genius. The conventional military wisdom of 1940 held that submachine guns required the precision craftsmanship of established arms manufacturers. German designers at Erfurt and Spandau had spent years perfecting the MP-40, which featured stamped trigger groups fitted into precisely machined receivers, carefully calibrated feed systems, and components that worked together in a mechanical symphony orchestrated through tolerances measured to fractions of millimeters. When British officers first examined the crude specifications for what would become the Sten, a weapon that could be manufactured by any competent machine shop with basic tools, the initial reactions ranged from skepticism to outright derision. Colonel Shepard, overseeing weapons procurement, noted that the design looked like something that would barely function if assembled correctly. Critics in the British Army's ordnance offices argued that mass production of such a rough weapon would inevitably result in failures at critical moments. They were simultaneously right and completely wrong. The secret was buried in the philosophy underlying the Sten's design. When Reginald Shepard and George Turpin conceived the weapon in just weeks during the desperate summer of 1940, they had one absolute requirement. It must be producible by factories with no existing small arms manufacturing experience. This wasn't a constraint, it was the entire point. The German MP-40 represented perhaps the finest example of precision manufacturing applied to a submachine gun, but that very precision meant that replacing production losses required access to the specific machine tools, trained workers, and uninterrupted supply chains that German industry possessed. The Sten's designers understood something fundamental about industrial warfare. The question was not whether a single gun was slightly better than another, but whether you could produce it in numbers that made individual gun quality irrelevant. The technical specifications tell this story in compressed form. The MP-40's receiver was a precisely machined steel billet, taking hours of lathe work to produce, while the Sten's receiver consisted of 2 halves of stamped steel welded together, a process that could be completed in minutes and required only that workers operate a welding torch competently rather than a precision machining center. The MP-40's bolt was a machined piece with specific surface hardening requirements. The Sten's bolt was a simple steel rod with a head welded on, hardened through a basic industrial process any foundry could perform. Where the MP-40 featured an adjustable gas vent and complex feed system to handle varied ammunition, the Sten relied on blowback principles so simple that overpressure could only jam the gun, not damage it, a self-limiting safety mechanism built into apparent crudeness. The magazine feed on the Sten, despite its terrible reputation, actually stemmed from the fact that curved magazines required stamping presses to manufacture reliably, whereas the straight magazine could be made from simple flat sheet metal bent at right angles. Consider what this meant during actual combat operations. In August 1942, British commandos mounted an attack on Dieppe with a significant number of Stens in their operational inventory. German observers noted that the weapons consistently jammed, occasionally had parts come loose, and generally performed poorly. The raid was a disaster, nearly 4,000 casualties out of 6,100 troops engaged, with limited objectives achieved. A Wehrmacht intelligence report specifically noted the Sten's failures as evidence of British weapons inferiority. Yet this same intelligence report, captured after the war, proves the deeper point. The Sten didn't need to be a superior gun if you could make enough of them to outfit every soldier in an invasion force. By September 1942, nearly every commando unit carried the Sten. By 1944, British production had reached 250,000 units per year while maintaining the same design. The reality of combat showed something that testing ranges could never reveal. On the beaches of Normandy in June 1944, Private Jack Wilson of the 1st Battalion Hampshire Regiment was pinned behind a bocage hedgerow with his Sten when a sniper's shot struck the magazine housing. The gun fell apart at the connection point, and Wilson, rather than being disarmed, simply grabbed the spare curved magazine from his pouch, reseated the receiver against the magazine feed, and continued firing. An MP-40 with a damaged receiver would have been scrap metal. More systematically, After-action reports from Normandy through the Rhine crossing show that Sten reliability increased with use, not decreased. The reason was counterintuitive. The loose tolerances that seemed so primitive actually allowed the gun to function with sand, mud, and debris in the action. The 1944 combat analysis prepared by British Ordnance noted that guns reported as non-functional due to jamming demonstrated reliable operation when cleaned of accumulated sand, whereas MP40s with similar contamination required disassembly and careful maintenance to return to service. This wasn't accidental tolerance. It was embedded philosophy. When engineers design to tight tolerances, every deviation becomes dangerous. When engineers design with deliberate looseness, nothing can bind. The Sten's magazines, infamous for feeding problems, actually performed this way because the gun's blowback spring was deliberately powerful enough that a magazine feeding round could sometimes bounce before fully seating. But any round that was damaged or too weak would never chamber at all rather than hanging up halfway. Experienced soldiers learned to tap the magazine and chamber rounds deliberately rather than relying on perfect feeding. Gunsmiths' records from captured German depots show that the MP40, in contrast, demanded precise ammunition specifications and careful handling of magazines. The deeper principle that made the Sten work wasn't hidden. It was simply unappreciated by designers who had spent their careers maximizing precision. The principle was this: in industrial warfare against a numerically determined enemy, a gun that 10 soldiers could carry reliably beats a gun that 5 soldiers can carry perfectly. By 1943, every British paratrooper, tanker, and commando carried a Sten because production meant there were enough for everyone. When the German army began encountering massed Sten use during the campaigns in North Africa and Sicily, captured soldiers consistently noted in interrogation reports shock at the sheer density of submachine gun fire. Wehrmacht soldiers reported that British soldiers seemed to carry submachine guns at rates they thought impossible based on industrial capacity. A German officer, captured at Gela, Sicily in July 1943, noted that the British have somehow equipped their entire forward units with automatic weapons, and their magazine supply appears unlimited. The German response to this Sten became the ultimate compliment. After capturing examples and studying production facilities, Wehrmacht officers essentially surrendered to the economic reality. Rather than attempt to redesign their weapon system, they simply began manufacturing Sten guns themselves in occupied factories and reamed captured examples to fire 7.92 mm ammunition. The German designation MP3008 represented not an improvement but an admission. The Sten's design philosophy was so fundamentally sound that even German precision manufacturers, when faced with the need for rapid production, abandoned their own traditions and simply copied it with minor modifications. Captured German ammunition depots in France 1944-1945 show massive stockpiles of 9mm parabellum manufactured in factories that had produced MP40 ammunition for years, now retooled to feed British ammunition for captured British guns. By 1945, over 3.7 million Sten guns had been manufactured in Britain alone, with millions more produced under license in Canada, the United States, and captured European factories. The gun that Wehrmacht officers had mocked in 1941 is crude, had become the most widely distributed submachine gun in the European theater. The question of whether it was better than the MP40 became irrelevant because the Sten existed in quantities that made the MP40's superiority immaterial. A soldier with an MP40 and no ammunition is functionally disarmed. A soldier with a Sten and a resupply line that actually works is equipped. The lesson that military establishments struggled to absorb, and that matters still today, is that industrial capacity and maintainability often matter more than individual weapon performance. Critics of the Sten were technically correct that a carefully machined MP40 was a superior machine. They were strategically wrong because they didn't understand that warfare isn't conducted by individual weapons, but by entire supply chains. The Sten didn't win because it was good. It won because it was good enough, and there were millions of them.